There you go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our September 2021 WILPF Zoom call. I'm Sandy Thacker from the East Bay, California branch. Also on our call team are Ann Henney, wave hand, there she is, from the East Bay branch, Mary Beth Gardam from Iowa City, Iowa, and Nancy Price from Davis, California, who can't join us tonight. Our technical support teammate is Ellen Thomas from the mountains of North Carolina. This Zoom meeting happens every second Thursday of each month at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, and is sponsored by Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, U.S. section. This is a public call. We're a video recording, and the video will be posted in just a few days to WILPF's YouTube channel and our One WILPF Call webpage. The link is in the chat and on the text pad. If you don't wish to be seen by the public, you can turn off your camera. But we hope most people will keep their camera on so we get to know one another better. WILPF US is a sisterhood, and our connections to one another keep us strong.
Hi, everybody. This is Ann Henney. And we didn't have a One WILPF call in August because we were all riveted to the WILPF US National Triennial Congress for more than 2 weeks. There were daily opportunities to learn about the work WILPF women are doing across the US and internationally. If you missed it or you want to watch any of the amazing workshops, plenaries, or panels, you can watch them on the WILPF YouTube channel. That link is also in the chat. Please, while you are there, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We really need to get up to 100 subscribers, and that way we can name the channel for WILPF. Many of the sessions are already posted and more will be there soon. The Congress was a tour de force that really underscored how resilient and committed WILPF women are. We'll hear more about that later on. For those who don't know, WILPF is the oldest women's international peace organization in the world, founded in 1915 by Jane Addams of Hull House. There are over 30 WILPF branches in the United States, and we are one of 50 sections around the world. You can find out more and join us at our website, www.wilpfus.org/join. It's on the text pad. Mary Beth?
I'm sorry, I was trying to put it into the text pad. Please keep yourselves muted when you're not speaking to reduce background noise. Type your questions or comments in the chat. We'll post the agenda in the chat as well. There's also a Google Doc in the text pad where you can add information under the red line. The link to that text pad is about to be in the chat. Please enter your name and location in the chat if you feel like it, so we can begin to get to know one another better. And the chat is also where you'll post questions later for our speakers to make them easier to find. So please type speaker questions in all caps so we can find them more easily.
For most of this call, you'll probably want to be on the gallery view so you can see all of us. But when the featured speakers present, you might want to switch to speaker view. We'll remind you when that's about to happen. Tonight, we'll be revisiting a couple of the Congress sessions on agriculture and food security, and preparing to challenge the organizers of the UN Food Summit. We'll also hear more about our Congress, and there will be important announcements you'll want to note and share with WILPF sisters, allies, and friends. Our featured speaker is a small family farmer from Iowa who is a member of WILPF Des Moines. Patty Naylor is a leader at the Family Farm Coalition. She and her husband are organic farmers in Iowa, and Patty also serves on the Food Sovereignty Alliance. Tonight, Patty is going to talk about what's happening at the UN Food Program and why our allies Via Campesina and Food Sovereignty Alliance are so upset about it. And she'll provide some great ways for WILPF members to participate in challenging the global corporate takeover of food. As Patty speaks, please put any questions you have for her into the chat in all caps, as Mary Beth mentioned. And right now, you might want to switch over to the speaker view. Patty, welcome. Tell us what's happening.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you everyone at WILPF for being here this evening. I would be happy to tell you what's going on. We did have a session during the Congress on August 14th, and we talked about the UN Food System Summit that's coming up. So if you'd like to watch that video again, the recording, you can. I watched a little bit of it myself again today to remind myself. We had several speakers from different viewpoints here in the United States and Canada talking about the UN food system. So as a little bit of a background, I am the focal point of what's called the Civil Society and Indigenous Peoples Mechanism for the Committee on World Food Security. So when the World Food Security Committee was reformed in 2010 after the food crisis, civil society gained a seat at the table in a sense. Members of the Committee on World Food Security have voting rights, the decision making, but when it comes to negotiations, that's where civil society comes in. We can negotiate alongside the private sector, the philanthropists, and the other agencies of the UN. So it's a very, very important place to be, a very inclusive and transparent place, and it's an important place for us to be. One of the things that are concerned about with this UN Food System Summit that is taking place on September 23rd is that the work that we have been doing, civil society, for the last 11 years and more, is in jeopardy because of corporate capture of the Food System Summit. Also, even the whole United Nations mechanisms are being undermined. And these are very important things to be paying attention to. This Food System Summit was the idea of the World Economic Forum and the Gates Foundation, which of course, if you're familiar with them, they are very corporate-minded entities. So we do know that from the very beginning, corporations were at the planning stage of this. I will, so some of the concerns that we have are simply that, well, excuse me, the corporate capture, of course, and the corporate influence is the biggest thing that we're concerned about overall. La Via Campesina has a lot of information on their website about that. So the civil society, which is a very inclusive mechanism, decided early on not to participate in the Food System Summit. We had that decision. We had lots of back and forth to decide, should we be inside the summit, should we be outside the summit, and it finally came down to there was nothing that we could do inside to influence it. We could influence from the outside. So we had a counter mobilization in July with 3.5 days of rallies, videos, webinars, speakers, and it was very, very successful. We reached a lot of people globally. And I think we think that we had some influence on the Food System Summit itself, delegitimizing the whole process for its lack of transparency and its lack of inclusiveness, its lack of focus on human rights. So we feel that we had some success. Of course, what's coming up now on the 23rd is the summit itself, and what comes out of that is unclear. Of course, because of this non-transparency, we don't really even know what will come out of this. But we do know that we need to be paying very close attention. So some of the specific concerns that we have are, again, the corporate capture, the corporations having influence in the United Nations where they shouldn't have, in a sense, above and beyond what private sector should be doing in influencing the negotiations that happen. Some of the things that could come out of this UN system is where financing will go. Right now, we're hoping, we have the hope that we can get more financing to small scale farmers and the needs of peasants, women, youth. Unfortunately, with this kind of a food system summit, the financing will be focused more on technology, technologically based solutions to our food system concerns, issues. That might mean climate smart agriculture, which is a false solution to climate change. It might mean lab grown meats, which is very strange kind of way of looking at food. And instead of having real meat grown on the ground, on the soil, on the land where it really does some good. So a lab grown meat might be one of the things that comes out of this. Of course, new GMOs, new GMO technologies, and of course the chemicals that follow those. One of the things that's happened recently is that a trade organization for the chemical industry called CropLife has partnered with the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN. That's very, very concerning. It goes way beyond what the Food and Agriculture Organization was meant to be doing. So financing would be one concern. Another concern, of course, is governance. Right now, the democratic decision-making that should be in the hands of governments is in the hands of governments, but with the more corporate control that there is, the more corporate influence and corporate power, and I should say also the funders, the philanthropists, such as the Gates Foundation is one example. They will also be influencing this. So that means there's little government policy negotiations happening when the private sector is involved. They're going to just bypass the negotiating processes that the United Nations already has in place. So that is a real concern, and we need to pay very close attention to that when we come out of the summit also. Accountability is another issue. When governments have control when the governments have say in the policy of what their agriculture systems and food systems are like, they are held accountable by the people of their country. When corporations have control, they are accountable to their stockholders. So profits are the very first thing that they are concerned about. That's what a corporation does. Even though, like in today's environment, we have socially responsible corporations, and those who are pledging to do something about climate change, and they're pledging to invest in regenerative agriculture, things like that. They are co-opting the things that the small farmers are doing, and in a sense, I would say that they are fooling the consumer. And so that's a real concern. The accountability, the transparency of a corporation. And instead of they will be accountable to their stockholders instead of to the people who are actually growing the food right now. That would mean women and youth who make up a large portion of our smallholder farmers and food workers as well. That means they will not be paying attention to the UN Declaration on the Rights of Peasants and other workers in rural areas. called UNDROP, and also the rights of indigenous peoples, which is another declaration of the United Nations, and the labor unions. All of these things that are already policies, already negotiated at the United Nations level, I believe are in jeopardy because of the outsized influence of corporations in the private sector. Let me look at my notes to see if I've missed anything here. I think one of the things too, when we looked at technology, when I was talking about where the financing can go, here in I'm in Iowa, and here in the United States, we have an idea that technology is progress, and that technology is going to solve a lot of our problems. But when it comes to food and it comes to agriculture, I think these are different. Food is so precious, and where we get our food and how we grow it depends on the soil, our water, the sunshine, and all of the interactions of those elements. And when a corporation takes that over, that's gone. One of the things that I see is that something like carbon markets has been really promoted here where I am. And that means that farmers would get paid for doing certain practices. But the corporations, the private sector, the agribusiness is already on board that, telling the farmers and instructing farmers what practices classify as carbon sequestration. And they include, or they don't talk about, but they include GMOs and chemicals. They don't exclude those things, which is wrong, I would say. So so when it comes to technology, I think that is another really key thing. I heard the CEO of our local farmer-owned cooperative, which markets the grain that we grow around here. His idea of the future is that farmers in the future will actually be paid more for the data that they collect than for the crop that they grow, which is very, very concerning, because that means the knowledge that the farmer has is being taken by any kind of sensor that they have in their equipment, their combines, their planters. Any knowledge that the farmer has is turned into data and bought by a corporation like Monsanto or Bayer or Cargill, any of these corporations who can capture that. And eventually they're going to use that to replace farmers, or to at least direct the farmers that are left on what they need to grow, what seeds they need to plant, what chemicals they need to plant. I'm an organic farmer. I think all of our farming should be organic, and this kind of thing really, really concerns me for the food that we eat here in the United States, and it concerns me about the advancement of food sovereignty around the globe. So many people are struggling through the pandemic right now. There's many more people who are hungry and food insecure at this time. And rural people, farmers around the world, in many parts of the world, are the ones who are most affected by hunger and malnutrition and food insecurity. I think that's, and so what can we do? So the Food System Summit will be coming up on September 23rd. Starting this coming Monday, the U.S. Food Sovereignty Alliance will be doing, a social media outreach. Mary Beth has already posted on the WILPF Facebook page one of our messages. And one thing that I would love to have WILPF people do is to forward and share all of our social media messages, creating your own, any of these themes and ideas that you believe is going to resonate with members of WILPF and the rest of the public would be wonderful to add to that. We are, like I say, we are inclusive and open, and we want everybody involved, because this is going to affect people today and on into the future. There is also going to be a National Family Farm Coalition event on the day of the 23rd of the summit. It will be virtual. And as the summit itself is also virtual, there's no in-person, as far as I know, there's no in-person meeting at all, no public in-person meetings, which makes it a very formal, non-decision-making kind of place. Everything is pretty much in place as far as their agenda. So the talking points, I think, are already there. But the NFFC event is going to be about a half day. We're going to have some webinars and some videos to share, and we will register for that. There will be a registration link coming up, but it's not out yet, and we will certainly share that with WILPF as soon as we get that. And then finally, the thing that you can do is pass on this information in any ways that you have open to you, op-eds, sharing articles, and talking to your chapters and to your neighbors. And once this food summit is finished on the 23rd, that won't be the end of our work. We need to continue this work, and we will. And so I'm really happy for WILPF members to be on board, and I am happy to answer any questions for you.
Mary Beth?
Thanks, Patty. I wanted to let people see that Facebook post. It's on our WILPF Facebook page. Easy to share from there. And they're asking for us to share it a lot next week. Thank you so much, Patty. We appreciate the alliances that you are maintaining on behalf of WILPF. And we encourage our members to follow your advice about challenging the corporatization of the food program at the UN. If there are questions for Patty, please put them into the chat in caps. Meanwhile, I hope that you got to look at that Facebook post, and we'll find it on our page and use it next week a lot. So I see that there's a question.
We do have a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, from Mary Hansen Harrison. Question, the FAO representative Lois Herman worked with WILPF US at our CSW panels. Can we get her to help? Patty, you want to respond to that?
Absolutely. Well, I hope we can. Of course, I met Lois when Mary and I were in New York City a few years ago. We can certainly. I don't know exactly where she is right now. She was, I believe, in Rome, if I remember right. So I don't know. Certainly, we can contact her. Anybody that's involved in these issues. The UN itself, I think, the legitimacy, the relevance of the United Nations itself, I think, is at stake. So I think anybody who's involved in the UN and these processes would be a great person to contact.
And Robin Luster, I think some of this information is in the chat, but her question is, whom do we contact to protest?
Well, that's a good question. It depends on what it is, it depends. So for instance, the U.S. Food Sovereignty Alliance is working on a letter to the Biden administration right now. It's not focused specifically on the Food System Summit itself, but it is focused on how the U.S. government positions itself in Rome, and how it either helps or doesn't help the issues of human rights. So we will be finishing that up in the next week, I believe, and passing that along. So that's one thing that we can do too. I'm glad I didn't forget that tonight. So it depends on, you can talk to your Congress people, you can talk to your ally organizations. I think is really important to think about too. Anyone who's concerned about climate change, the environment, pesticides, human rights, migration and refugees and war and conflict, all of these issues are related. We know that food has been used as a weapon, and it's also used as a tool to control people. So what happens to our food system affects so many different issues.
And there was a comment or a little bit earlier in your talk from Mary Sanderson, which she said sounds like back to feudalism. Do you want to comment on that?
Well, sure. In a sense, it's like corporations are colonizing the world in bit by bit. So, and I think when it comes to labor, that's going to be just it's very, very concerning what's happening on the countryside and who's going to be the laborers in the future. We're farmers here in the United States, so we got a flyer in the mail just the other day from a company that recruits H-2A workers from, the way it's worded, it's just unbelievable, is that we have workers for you who are hungry and they are willing to work and they want stable work, and so they will come back every year. We know, of course, that those kind of workers are being exploited, and they were from Mexico and from South Africa. And that's anyway. So the idea that labor is going to be one of the things that's going to be shifted wherever it needs to be around the world, wherever the corporations need it. It's not going to be the people who are living in communities who will be doing the work to raise and produce food for their own communities.
Mm-hmm. I think Mary Hansen Harrison mentioned that WILPF US is a partner with the U.S. Food Sovereignty Alliance, and Mary Beth mentioned that also we're a partner with Via Campesina. So for those of you who didn't know that, that's good information.
Cheryl had a question in the chat as well.
I didn't see that. I'm sorry. Let's see, where's Cheryl?
Yeah, I see the one about can small farmers produce enough food for 8 billion people?
Oh, thank you. I didn't see it. Go ahead.
I don't always see other questions either. That's a very good question. There's research that's been done, and I don't have a link to it because sometimes we end up getting the information kind of passed down. But a few years ago, research showed that I forget the number, 70% of the food is grown by small farmers, smallholder farmers. Can they feed 8 billion people? That's not so much the question, I don't think. I mean, that is, how do I want to say this? My husband and I grow corn, soybeans, and they're commodities, and they are storable commodities. So I think what's important is to think about what foods we eat and how they are transported around the world, and how many different middlemen they go through, and how they're processed. So when we think about food, there's a lot of different ways of thinking about food. It's not just the manufactured, processed things that we think about a lot. So certainly our cities are going to need more food. Plenty of farmers need to be able to market their food, but I think when we have more regional areas, with trade being the secondary consideration instead of the first consideration, I think that would be helpful. But it is a good question and something to be considered.
Okay, I think that's all the questions, and I want to thank you.
I'm sorry, did we get the one from Mary Hansen Harrison? The FAO representative Lois Herman worked at
Yeah, we
WILPF US.
did.
I'm sorry.
She did answer
Okay.
that. That's okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Well, thanks so much for this information, Patty. It really reverberates with everything Vandana Shiva has written about and what she presented at our Congress too. So our food sustainability is too important to trust to big ag corporations, And these private-public partnerships at the United Nations have been damaging the processes for pursuing peace at other levels of the UN as well. They are a dangerous encroachment of profiteers into the sacred space of international peacemaking. So thank you very much for all this very important information.
Thank you very much
Sure.
for having me here.
Our first announcement tonight comes from the Cuba and Bolivarian Alliance Committee. Lenny Villagomez-Reeves, what do we need to know? Lenny, you're muted. There we are.
What I feel you need to know now is a little different from what I felt you need to know when I sent in the announcement. There is a campaign to collect money to send PPE to Cuba. I know that some of you, maybe many of you, have already contributed to the syringe campaign or to the meds campaign, and I thank you very much. These campaigns are doing well. If any of you want to make a contribution to the PPE campaign, please go to Global Health Partners website and you can do it through them, or you can get the information from the chat. What I wanted to say that I think is more significant, again, these campaigns are doing well, but material aid campaigns are not going to solve the problem. They're not going to fix it. I mean, what we need to do to fix the problem is get rid of the blockade, because that's the only way to solve Cuba's problems. The gentleman in this picture, fully vaccinated, was intubated this morning due to COVID. He's in a Havana hospital. All I want to say is write the president, ask him to reverse the extraordinary measures put in place by Trump. Write your senators and your representatives, ask them to change Cuba policy and get rid of the so-called embargo. These are the people that are being hurt by it. And this is my family. And I just can't talk anymore. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay, Lenny. I know that we also wanted to include information about Brazil. Brazil is facing their own sort of January 6th type insurrection. If President Bolsonaro there is not reelected, his followers are threatening to do the same kind of insurrection that we saw in Washington. And I'm going to put a link to an article about that into the chat. It's worth noting. Hopefully Bolsonaro will not be reelected, but who knows what kind of violence will occur because of that.
Yes, thank you, Lenny, for that very personal announcement. And giving us ways to support the Cuban people through this very challenging time. Our next announcement comes from Women, Money, and Democracy Committee. Mary Beth, there's an exciting webinar coming up. Tell us about it.
Thanks, Anne. Our committee made a decision in late 2020 as the pandemic was raging and people were honoring the essential workers who are keeping us all going. We decided it wasn't enough to just thank these folks, the healthcare professionals, but also the housekeepers, the janitors, the grocery store folks, the postal workers, the truck drivers, even Amazon workers. We needed to also pay them a living wage. And that goes not only for caregivers who work professionally, but also for caregivers who work at home, caring for young children, elders, handicapped or infirm family or neighbors, many people in our society give up careers and the financial security that that could get them to care for the most vulnerable. And many have no other choice but to do so. And the work they do, paid or unpaid, plays a pivotal role in keeping our economy perking along, even though they never get credit for it. They're always seen as sort of deadbeats and lowlifes and not worthy. So in June, we devoted a One WILPF call to this subject, organized by our committee member, Martha Collins. And you'll remember hearing from the very eloquent Danielle Atkinson of Mothering Justice and Truth Freeman about hunger and the need to pay people a living wage. The second of these caregiver wage events is coming up, and we're so grateful to Mary Bricker Jenkins for arranging a co-sponsorship for this webinar with the National Welfare Rights Union, an organization with a very long and respected history. And she obtained for us 4 really exciting and equally eloquent speakers. Mary, can you tell us about what's happening on September 18th?
Sure. First of all, I want to say to Lenny, if you're still on, and to all of you and each one of you who has been so deeply affected by this pandemic, words are simply not enough to convey from any of us what we feel for these losses, that most of which could have been avoided, should have been avoided, and particularly in Cuba, where we really owe a special debt because we have denied the Cuban people access to the benefits of the world for which we've all worked for so long. I also want to thank Mary Beth and all of the people on her committee that put these monthly meetings on. To me, they have just absolutely regenerated WILPF in so many ways, as have so many other things, but these are really very special. Sometimes, however, we have to step out of the Thursday nights and tune in on other days. And so I'm asking you to tune in on September 18th to this webinar that we are co-sponsoring with the National Welfare Rights Union and the Economy of Our Own. Probably everybody on this call tonight has either done or is intimately connected with somebody who has done unpaid caregiving work. We raise our children, we care for our homes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and we have not been paid for it. There has been a campaign around since a formal campaign since 1971, informally before that. Since 1971, people have been struggling for wages for the work that we do in our homes, caring for our loved ones. This webinar is going to explore that in depth, the relationship between caregiving and capitalism, how they are intricately connected to hyper exploit all of us, including, and I should say, thanks to Patty Naylor, to the question of food. Can you imagine what it is to live on $1.50 a day for food in this country and having to feed your children? Can you imagine how much labor, unpaid labor, unrecognized labor is involved in that? Pause for a minute and think about the struggles of people living in poverty today for that. And also think about the mistakes that we have made in mobilizing the women's movement all these years by not listening to women who are living in poverty about what it really takes to solve all of our problems in this country by ensuring that basic human needs are met. So there on your screen, you see the images of 4 people, one of whom is on this call right now, Pat. Hello, Pat Albright from Philadelphia. a woman who has lived in poverty, who has been on welfare, who has cried out for wages, not welfare, so that we can support ourselves and our children. Margaret Prescott, some of you know, many of you know, probably from California. She hosts a syndicated news program most days a week, has absolutely wonderful spokespeople from around the world, including up on the upper left of your screen, Selma James, who is now 81 years old and who is the coordinator of Global Women's Strike and the founder of Wages for Women. Then
91.
My friend, I'm sorry?
91.
91, yes, 91 years old. Marion Kramer, who is a little bit younger, 79 to be exact. Marion Kramer, my dearly beloved friend and comrade, the president of the National Welfare Rights Union, had her voice and others of people who were living in poverty been listened to so many years ago, we would probably be in a different place, not so much with regard to our policies, but with regard to the work that we must do if we are going to achieve basic human needs being met for everybody. We have to organize for them. We have to organize across race lines. We have to organize across geographic lines. We have to organize across what most people think of class lines, but those lines, everything that divides us, in order to ensure that basic human needs are met. From the bottom up, we rise together. So thanks. September 18th, and I'll just say personally, that's the birthday of my dear sister Amanda, who died this past year. And this is a very special day for me, so I hope that that you'll tune in. And again, thanks to Patty Naylor for feeding us and for ensuring that good food can be made available to all of us who are struggling to survive. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Mary BJ, for all of your work on this. These kinds of strategic partnerships keep WILPF more visible on national and international stage. And these speakers are really going to knock it out of the park. Please, everyone, spread the word far and wide about this webinar, especially to people you know who are essential workers struggling to make ends meet. Before we continue with announcements, we're going to take a few minutes to just celebrate and honor the fabulous tour de force that was our WILPF Triennial Congress in August. From start to finish, the professionalism and technical savvy demonstrated by our own members, plus the incredible speakers and presenters, many of international repute, it really was truly amazing. We hope most of you got to attend at least some of the sessions. It was impossible to observe the incredible amount and quality of work WILPF is advancing in the world and not be extremely proud to be a WILPF member. If anyone doubts that our organization will survive for another generation, those doubts evaporate when you see Mary Hanson Harrison and the ConPro committee's work pulling off a national conference we can all be proud of completely virtually for the first time in our history, and with mostly an all-volunteer cohort. We're asking Mary to speak briefly about the challenges and successes and what you see this Congress contributing to WILPF's legacy. Following Mary, if anyone wants to lift up one session at Congress that really impressed them or strengthened their commitment to activism at WILPF, please put STACK in all caps into the chat, and we'll call on a few of you after Mary speaks. Go ahead, Mary. You're on mute. You're muted, Mary.
Yeah, it's probably a good thing. I said I'm getting choked up here. It's been a long journey to get to share with all of you. And boy, I tell you, I am so proud, and our committee is so proud of our WILPFers and the people who contributed their time and energy and the wonderful speakers we have. But we had a meeting today of the Congress Program Committee, and we were all just so thankful that we had the opportunity to bring so many voices and so much good work and to everybody over the 2-week period. And as Pat Hines said, it was bodacious. So, and sometimes in this world, when you get down and depressed, you got to either lay down or get up. And I think we got up. So I do want to say we had 241 registrants plus 5 others and about 30 other comped participants and panelists, speakers. We touched nearly 300 people. And we're going to be touching them as much as possible. One of our goals is to make sure that this is not the end. This is just the beginning. And we are planning to use the videos for sending to branches, using them for branch meetings. And we'll have how-tos have been edited, and you can use them for your branch meetings as well. And try to gather more members at large as a community in the Jane Addams branch. So that I think what we wanted to do most of all is to bring each other's the knowledge that and the interrelationships that we have. We had a great deal of faith, and it was not disappointed. We were not disappointed. We had a great deal of faith in WILPF women. You all just, well, I always thought you were magnificent. But as I said, I think that the idea that we can really mine our participants and our panelists and get them to join WILPF, and we can join their organizations. I think that is one of the things that I think we can contribute. We have younger people, we have more diverse people that we also had a lot of not just scholars and not just famous people, but we had just the people who are the lifeblood of WILPF. And the next time we get out, we will have more public participation as well. So somebody wrote, let's not do it one next year, please. So I said, no, it's every 3 years. You can relax. But anyway, it's just, we all wanted just to thank you and congratulate you. I do have something to add to just because Patty Naylor and I are Iowa Farm Girls. There is the special rapporteur, Helene Aller, in 2014 wrote a wonderful article, many of them, on small farmers can feed the world. So you can, I put her in the chat and it will help you. Patty was right about the 70%, by the way, Patty. I knew you would be. Yes, the answer is yes, that small farmers can feed the world. And thank you all again.
Thank you so much, Mary. Just an incredible feat. And we have a few people who have signed up on the stack. If you want to comment on any of the sessions you particularly like, please type the word stack. The first person is Mary Beth Gardam. I also wanted to mention that that earlier Darian posted in the chat that all the sessions are already posted. So she says she has it
Videos,
on good
right.
authority. So
Yeah,
that's
right.
really fantastic. So we've got Mary Beth and then Cheryl and somebody who's host. So I'm not sure who that is.
Yeah, I just wanted to
okay. I got that. All right, Mary Beth, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that Barbara Taft couldn't be here tonight, but on our program call the other night, she said something that was really interesting to me, and I called her to talk about it. She said she's the leader of the Phoenix branch in Arizona. She said that she's going to be using some of these recordings of our sessions to try to recruit new members in her branch. And I asked her how she was planning to do that. And she said she frequently has conversations with people about the subjects covered in many of our recorded sessions. So she's planning to contact them, people she's talked to about these things before, and say, you know, I've told you about WILPF in the past, but I know you're interested in X. And because of that, I hope that you'll go to this recording and take a look at what kinds of work WILPF is doing in this area. She thinks that she'll be able to actively use them to actively recruit for her branch. I think that's a great idea for other branches as well. And we also hope to use some of the short clips from the recordings in social media. So that was my contribution. And there were just too many excellent sessions for me to pick just one. I'll let other people do that.
Thank you, Mary Beth. And Mary Hanson Harrison wanted to respond.
Yes, Tuesday, Robin Lloyd is going to do that. Have a clip from one of the presentations that Disarm did that we thought that was particularly good. And so she's starting the ball rolling too. So that's good.
Fantastic. All right, Cheryl.
Yes, so I was just, I take notes all the time. I took 43 pages of notes on, I attended virtually every single session, okay? And the one that was most enjoyable, because most of them were rather depressing, because they represent so much work that remains to be done to improve the world, was the fashioning change, where they showed us a video of a fashion show that I think was Fresno had done some years ago.
Cape Cod did it.
Pardon?
Cape Cod.
Cape Cod
Ranch.
Pardon me. Where they dress people up in, with parts of their clothing represented different things that were wrong with the world and needed to be dealt with. I thought it was very funny. And we all, we asked afterwards, well, do you still have these costumes? Can we borrow them? And unfortunately, the answer was no. They were taking up too much room in somebody's basement and they'd gotten rid of them. But anyway, that was, as I say, that brought a smile to my face. The Blue Communities that was moderated by Nancy Price, that, I probably learned more from that. And they had speakers from Food and Water Watch, and then one of their staff members, told us how to do a campaign, step by step to whatever your campaign was. She had laid it all out, and I found that very useful. I wrote down all the things we should be doing. Many of them we are doing, but I always appreciated a session where we were given some action or some information that we can use ourselves in the future. So, and I appreciated that Odile from France suggested that we have a feminist foreign policy working group, and that we pay more attention to foreign policy from a feminist point of view. And so I'm hoping that she and some others will actually end up having a group that works on that. I mean, there is a lot of information on the WILPF International website about it, but I think we all need to pay more attention, especially when we see what's happening in Afghanistan from a poor, badly thought through foreign policy. It's got us in a real pickle. And got the poor women of Afghanistan in a terrible state. And I'm so pleased to see. I read the BBC News that women are out in the streets in Afghanistan protesting. Yeah. They've not snuck back into their houses and being quiet. And I just hope they're not getting beaten and lashed because of it. But we do need to think how WILPF can help them. Part of my report that I'll give. So WILPF International did get WILPF Afghanistan women out of Afghanistan. There was a section there, and they did get them out, and they are now in Norway. So anyway. But I did, everything was really excellent, and I said 45 pages of notes that I made. So, I did suggest the other day that the International Triennial, organised by Australia, which is happening next year, is going to be virtual, and I think our Compro committee should hire themselves out as consultants to help the International set up their virtual Congress, because you've learned a lot of stuff, and I think you should pass your knowledge and expertise onto that organizing committee, and if they'll pay you for it, even better.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. You deserve a prize for attending almost every session and also giving us the high points so well. We have a couple more people. Virginia Pratt, you typed a comment. I wondered if you wanted to speak it out. Oh, you need to unmute.
Pleasantly surprised to hear reports about aligning with women who were hotel workers, who were organizing, in addition to people of color in the South, I forget if it was North or South Carolina, who were very, very negatively impacted by factory hog farming. I hadn't heard North Carolina that kind of report before. And I was heartened by both of those because I think historically WILPF has been, membership of WILPF has been privileged, highly educated, middle-class women. And to see the alignment with people of color and struggling and unrecognized workers, including the segment earlier today, and the recent alignment with the Poor People's Campaign. I just found that very heartening.
Thank you very much for that comment, Virginia. And I think the last person we'll hear from is Sandy Thacker.
Hello again. I just wanted to comment. We presented. I'm involved in a group called Before Enlisting, and we presented a presentation about counter recruitment. And I basically, we thought it went really well, but I wanted to comment on that it didn't feel like it was just one direction. On Zoom, it's so easy to just feel like you're speaking and you have no idea what people think. And
Yeah.
on that particular call, we got so many good questions, comments, appreciation. And, you know, our vets, they work their butts off, and, you know, for them to hear, you know, what great work they're doing from all of you was great. And also just to see the interaction that went on was extremely helpful for it. You know, we had our next meeting, we were all really pumped because
Yes,
it had
great.
been it had been really it was very affirming of what we're doing. So thank you all that attended the presentation. So I think that I will move on here now. And so once more, thank you, Mary, for all of your incredible work on this. And also a special thanks to part-time staffer Nikki Abeleda and to Glenn Ruga and to all the presenters and everyone who attended the Congress. It was truly an amazing 2 weeks. So we'll finish up our announcements now. Nancy Price, co-chair of the Earth Democracy Committee, could not be with us. And she has 2 announcements to share, which I will read. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change hosts the formal meeting of the Conference of the Parties, or COP, the COP26 Summit. You can find information about this at ukcop26.org. And I think Mary Beth or someone will put that in the chat. The COP26 Summit will take place October 31st to November 13th in Glasgow, Scotland, and will bring parties together to accelerate action toward the goals of the 2015 Paris Agreement and the pledges made there, and to review what was achieved since then and what, in the face of the accumulated evidence, must the United Nations countries do now to make new commitments. Climate groups are now organizing to be in Glasgow and participate virtually. As we all know, from the fires, droughts, devastating storms, that the devastation of climate change must be met face on with a bold agenda. I think this is an opportunity right now because it's in everybody's face all over the world, and you just can't ignore it. Your Earth Democracy team will begin in a few weeks to send e-alerts of how to begin planning for events here and in the United States to influence the United States position at COP26. Stay tuned and plan to mobilize in your community in many different ways. Get out your paints, crayons, cardboard, and other materials to make a sign. Go to the WILPF website and click on resources, and then scroll down to decide which banner you might order to use in a march, protest, or standing with some friends on a street corner. And as always, practice good social distancing.
Nancy also reports on a groundbreaking legal suit being brought in Minnesota by tribal lawyer Frank Bebo on behalf of the Ojibwe tribe. Bebo's case centralizes the rights of nature, specifically to protect the rights of sacred wild rice plants. It advances the claim that Enbridge's pipeline would violate the rights of wild rice, which the tribe enshrined in the tribal law in 2018. The impact of a decision on this will be very far-reaching, and we are hoping he wins the case because the rights of nature deserve to be prioritized over profits. And it will have implications for the current efforts to complete the Line 3 pipeline, which crosses over fields of wild rice. The rights of water would also be an important legal battle that needs to be taken up at some point soon. Wild rice, of course, grows in water.
I wanted to also add that I spoke with Frank earlier in the week, and he told me that they're going to have a hearing at a tribal court next week, which will be on Zoom. And he's going to find out if interested parties like WILPF can participate in the Zoom. He'll let me know, and if they are, I can let the attendees of this call know. I think it would be cool to have a showing of people who stand with the Ojibways on this issue.
Good. That's good, Mary Beth. So we're grateful to Nancy for keeping us in the loop with these updates. Our relaunched Advancing Human Rights Committee is planning some ways for you to interact and get engaged. Joan Goddard is the acting chair of the committee. Joan, how can people connect with Advancing Human Rights?
Okay, the best way is to write to AHR, don't have to be capital letters, but that's technically the way it is, chair at WILPFus.org. And I will, and tell me what you want to know in the chat and also on the text pad. And I encourage everybody to copy the text pad. There's a huge amount of information there, some of which has been conveyed orally, some of which has been transferred into the chat, and some of which was expressed during the initial program statements and so on, the information, but the text pad has a lot. And there are 3 places in the chat where you can get to the URL for it. You can click on it, it'll take you, and then you can keep and, keep it or print it or copy it or whatever you want to do. We've had 3 meetings this past summer, end of June, July, and August of the AHR full committee. And we did have, 20 people actually, plus people actually attending these meetings, which is quite remarkable for most of the issue committees. And we're really grateful. But basically the AHR committee is made up of almost like almost unlimited numbers, but for now 5 and maybe 6 or 7 more. I mean 6 or 7 to totally pretty soon. The information about that is in the chat where I copied what I put in the text pad, and it basically is all of the human rights possibility for committees, for subcommittees of AHR that are not covered by some other issue committee of WILPF, which of course several human rights issues are covered by other committees. But the United Nations and Women is a little unclear probably, and that's not the name that will end up probably, but basically it's the United Nations efforts that are focused specifically on women or mostly done by women, etc. And immigration is a subject that was decided in 2017 at the Congress then, which are every 3 years. So since we skipped a year, I think we might be having one in 2 years, a US one. And that it was called Immigration and Border Militarization. And so that I don't know how much they're going to be focusing on border militarization, but they're definitely focusing on immigration and what can be done around the country to help new immigrants. So I'm not going to go through all of the others that are listed, but obviously an important one is anti-racism work. And we hope that you will let other people know that you and others will write to AHR chair at uswilpf.org. And I'll be glad to connect you with the subcommittee or committees that you are interested in. They're meeting now for the first time in September. The subcommittees are having their separate meetings where they will have more time than the half hour or so during these full committee meetings. They will have time to get organized and make plans and let the rest of us know so we can encourage each other and other people we know to join. Thank you. If anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer.
I don't see any other questions for you, Joan, but we can always send them along.
Yeah, send
if we
them
get
to
any.
our chair at wilpfus.org when you think of them. Thank you.
Yes. I'm glad to introduce our section president, Darian DeLu, who has a series of announcements. Darian, welcome.
You're
I think
muted,
Darian-
Darian.
Is she still here?
Well,
Oh, there
she
she is.
was,
Okay.
Yep, here I am. Sorry.
Oh, it's sunset.
I didn't want to be unmuted and make noise until it was my turn. Sorry. So I'm delighted to make a number of announcements. One that I want to especially emphasize is that we have the deadline for both applying to be a candidate for our board elections and for nominating someone to be a candidate in our board elections. The nominations deadline is October 1st, and I really want to encourage people to think about, is there some WILPFer who maybe just needs that extra nudge to give her the confidence that she would be a good candidate? It's sometimes the case for us as women that we're brought up not to be presumptuous, not to be tooting our own horn, not to brag. And I think many WILPFers are wonderfully qualified to be excellent board members. So the details are in the upcoming e-news, which I believe will be out tomorrow. It's already available on our website. So if you'll look in the updates, you'll find that you can see the list of openings, the job descriptions for the different positions, and the application itself. You do have to have been a member of WILPF for the preceding 24 months. I forget preceding what, the date of nomination or the date of installation, something. But the nominating committee can give you all that information, and their email address is also in the e-news. So please, if you get the e-news, look for it in the e-news. And if you don't get the e-news, you can always find the e-news on our website by going to the e-news archives, or if it's a current e-news, as it is in this case, by simply going to news on the homepage of the website. Also, we have a social media committee which has only a few members. We would be delighted to have more members than we have now. So if you're interested in social media, and especially if you use Instagram or Twitter, we would love to have you help us develop better ways to reach out to the world of social media. So you can contact me at president@wilpfus.org for more information about that. And if you participated in Congress, you probably had the tech experience. Hopefully it was a positive experience that you were able to get connected to Zoom, that you came across the documents on our Congress documents page on the website that provided additional information. But if you have any feedback on the functioning of the technology for the Congress, we'd be glad to hear more from you on that. In general, what do people need to know in order to be better able to get on to Zoom? Everyone here today hopefully has succeeded in getting onto Zoom, but perhaps you know someone in your branch who has some questions about how to do that. So again, please contact me at president@wilpfus.org if you have any such comments. We are looking for another 21 subscribers to our YouTube page. That's the page that the link was listed earlier in the chat. It's the page where you can find all the Congress recordings. If we had another 21, or maybe it's down to 20 by now, subscribers, then we could call it the WILPF YouTube page or something like that. We could choose our own designation. So if you subscribe to YouTube, we'd love to have your subscription. And then I have put in the text pad a lot of this information about our fiscal sponsor is called the Peace Development Fund. If you're not familiar with the intricacies of nonprofits, WILPF is a nonprofit, but we're not enough of a nonprofit. The kind of nonprofit we are allows us to be politically active, but it doesn't allow us to receive tax-deductible donations. So to get tax-deductible donations, we have to have a fiscal sponsor who is a 501c3, a full-fledged nonprofit. Our fiscal sponsor is the Peace Development Fund, or PDF, and they've been around for 40 years now. They're celebrating their 40th anniversary with a number of events in September and October, and I will go ahead and put more of that information into the chat as well as into the text pad, but it's in the text pad right now. On the 20th of September, we will be having a presentation where WILPF, along with representatives from Women Cross DMZ and the Women for Genuine Security, and perhaps others, yes, Whose Knowledge is a group that works with the internet and the information that's available there. All of these groups were at the Women's Peace Initiative back in 2019 in March, and we'll be talking about our experiences since that time and the successes we have had. So if you're interested, you're welcome to sign up for that Zoom event. It's at 5:30 Eastern Time, so that would be 2:30 Pacific Time, whatever day of the week September 20th is. I believe it's a weekend, I'm not sure. I think it's a Sunday. So I believe that's it for my announcements, unless there are questions.
I don't see any questions in the chat. Thank you so much, Darian.
Certainly, thank you.
Important announcements. And I think nearly the last of our announcements. World traveler Cheryl Spencer represented the U.S. Section Disarm and Wars Committee when she recently visited the Geneva office of the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons. Cheryl, what was it like to hold the Nobel Prize in your hand?
Yes, I'll get to that. But just, Darian, you said you'd put something in the text pad.
Yes.
But I don't see anything under your name towards the end.
It's way at the end. It says the Women Peacemakers Initiative.
Okay, is it under your subtitle of Darian's announcements?
No, I didn't see wherever that subtitle was. I missed it completely.
Oh, okay. All right. So here, okay, thank you.
And I suspect that Mary Beth is about to copy it into the chat because she highlighted it.
Right.
She looks as if she's concentrating to get it into the chat. Yay, Mary Beth.
Somebody, oops, yes. So, okay, so I spent 10 days in Switzerland, all of them with my husband, and then half of them with my daughter who joined us from Paris. And we ended up in Geneva. And I was, of course, cognizant that the WILPF International has its headquarters in Geneva and ICANN has its headquarters in Geneva. And I could see I had an hour or two on one of the days that I could slip away and visit these offices. Unfortunately, the WILPF International office, they're still working from home. And so there was nobody in the office. And they had also been extremely busy because they were helping the WILPF Afghanistan section women leaders get out of Afghanistan. So they actually managed to get the women who had been working as part of the section into Norway with their families. And you're all very familiar with the efforts that it took to get people out of Afghanistan. So so that freed me up to then see if I could visit ICANN instead. And somebody is scrolling up and down. You can see on the screen, I put in the Google Doc. Yes, stop on that one, please. So ICANN actually has a nice suite of offices. There's about 7 rooms they have. And they have like a lounge where Beatrice Finn said she was very busy, but she would give me a bit of time to talk. I corresponded with her by email to arrange this. And the previous day, they'd had a visit from a Gambian ambassador, and Gambia had recently ratified the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons. I mean, the prohibition on, sorry, I'm still jet lagged, TPNW. And so they actually have the Nobel Peace Prize, which is all gold, in a safe, and they'd taken it out of the safe so he could see it. And so they allowed me to see it too. So this photograph, they have this banner, this red banner that you can see there. You may have seen quite a few photos with Beatrice Finn on the right and somebody else on the left. I'm actually holding the Nobel Peace Prize. WILPF has been very much, there's a close-up of it, involved with getting this treaty actually to come into existence. And so we're one of their partner organizations, and as far as they're concerned, we earned the Nobel Peace Prize as well. And that's why she had no trouble in asking me if I'd like to hold it. So here's a picture I took of it. It's always the same. And the fact it went to ICANN is shown on the blue at the bottom. And that's a picture of Mr. Nobel himself, and it's all in Latin around the outside. And it's not very heavy. But anyway, so she and we chatted for about 40 minutes. My goal was to tell her about the kind of things our Disarm Committee is doing towards supporting the TPNW, towards reducing the enormous amounts of money being spent on the military here in the US. And we spent some time, of course, commiserating about what was going on in Afghanistan and how much money, the 20 years that the US Army was there cost us like $2.3 trillion, cost the US taxpayers $2.3 trillion. That's an enormous amount of money. And nothing really has been gained. I'm pleased to see that some women in Kabul are out on the streets protesting, and we're hoping that they're not, suffering because of that. This is a picture now you see, that is Beatrice relaxing in their lounge. I sat on the sofa on the right, she sat there, and she was pleased to hear what we've been doing and our continuing efforts to raise up the treaty so that it becomes more known in the US that it exists and its implications. And so scroll down, there's a picture of the actual certificate. So when you get the Nobel Peace Prize, you get a certificate with it. The other way, yes, there it is. So it's a bit small there, but each year when they give out the Nobel Peace Prize, they ask a well-known artist to produce some art to put on the left-hand side. And the artist, I presume it was a woman artist, chose to put this picture of a woman holding a baby. It's their impression about what this Peace Prize was all about. So these things were on the walls. I also took photographs of their photos on the walls. So anyway, it was a very nice visit. I'm pleased I took the time, and the fact I got 40 minutes with a very busy person was a great honor. And so, Beatrice is now, so Beatrice was actually able to tell me she is a member of WILPF. She actually worked with Reaching Critical Will with Ray Atchison some years ago before she moved over to help direct the ICANN campaign. So she's really quite familiar with WILPF in general, but I feel I ended up better, she has a better feel for the efforts we're making. And about the Eleanor Holmes Norton bill and things like that. So it was a worthwhile visit, and I recommend that anybody going in by train to Geneva also goes to visit, because their office is in a building that's right across from the train station. So it's very convenient. So any questions from anybody about it? And I can send out the way those pictures, they're in the text pad. Anybody who would like their own picture of the medal, I can send you a full JPEG.
Thanks for sharing, Cheryl.
Yeah, it was great. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. Appreciate it.
You represented all of us.
Yeah,
so thank
that's
you.
right.
Yeah, well, I try to.
That's right. So that brings us to the end of our planned meeting. Save the chat for your files before you leave the meeting. It will also be available on our One WILPF call webpage. Our next One WILPF Zoom call will be on October 14th. Our short soapbox starts immediately, so stay on to continue the dialogue for a bit if you can. Meanwhile, unmute yourselves and let's say good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Thanks, everyone.
Night all.
Thank you.
Night all.
Where's the champagne?
Hey, Lenny.
Or a martini.
It was a great Congress. What a Congress.
Beautiful.
Great Congress. Really great.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.